Good afternoon, everybody. Ooh, look, my reflection. Welcome back to the channel. It is a nice 115 degrees today. So we are definitely going to be staying in the home. But just to kind of give you guys a quick recap of the tank, in the last episode, I believe we had a feeding. All the corals in here have been doing super well. Shh, go breathe somewhere else. Go. But yeah, the tank overall is doing super well. As if you can possibly see on the sides, we have a lot of fat copepods just chilling on that glass there. I mean, of course, I could easily clean it with the magnet scraper right there, but you know, we are just gonna leave it as is because they are feeding on the algae that's on the glass, and there's really no reason to bother them whatsoever. Now, for today's episode, we're going to do a couple things. The first one is we're just going to remove that little snail shell. When you do acclimate, you know, all these little snails, we have the trochus right here, and then the little hermit crabs. Occasionally, one of them just doesn't happen to make it, and that one that didn't make it happens to be this little guy. And it's just, you know, sometimes they just can't acclimate from being in the wild to being in an environment like this, because it is maybe a little bit different than where they came from, but that's okay. You know, it's what happens. It just happens. And then what we're going to go ahead and do today is add a couple more corals. So in this tank, as you guys have seen, we have the zoas here. Quite a few different kinds of zoas, and we have a couple mushrooms in this tank. Well, even though these are all pretty darn nice, they are honestly just kind of, you know, boring. There's not a lot of movement in this tank, besides the pump just giving that nice little shimmer to the tank. And, you know, a lot of people, especially ladies like my wife, they pretty much only like my tank when they see something kind of swaying with the current. And of course, with zoas being so close to the ground and mushrooms being so close to the ground, you don't really get that. I mean, you could say like, hey, this little Rickordia is moving a little bit, but that's kind of about it. And, you know, it's definitely going to be nice to add a little bit of movement to the tank just to kind of give it that more reefy, current looking vibe. And that's pretty much what we're going to be doing today. So today we are actually going to be adding a couple leathers to the tank. More importantly, they're going to be the leathers from my main display. And they're pretty much the only flowing variety of coral that doesn't, you know, have a skeleton like these torches, which would obviously, you know, I would need to dose if I put a lot of these into the tank, just because they do have a calcium skeleton and they would need to grow. But with the simple reef tank, obviously we don't want to do any type of dosing besides a regular water change. So we're going to go ahead with, for example, like these long polypy type of toadstools. They do just a nice swaying in the current. And then this one is actually a Fiji yellow toadstool. So under highlight, it's a nice bright yellow color. Here it's a more tan, yellowish green color, just because it's all the way on the bottom of the tank, but it looks a lot nicer once you get it high up there. Now, as soft corals, they're basically exactly the same as any other soft coral. They really don't do any type of calcium or alkalinity consumption. I think they pretty much just live right off of nutrients. They really love like the reefroid stuff. I can see like their little polyps close sometimes once they get a little bit of food. And they're generally super easy to care for, with the exception of maybe sometimes they have like a little chemical warfare with each other, because they do release like a slime sometimes when they're cleaning themselves off. But I haven't really found that to be the case. And as you can see, these three are all right next to each other. They're all different types of toadstools, and they do perfectly well. So we're going to go ahead and add this one here and that one there to the Max Nano Peninsula. And then, yeah, we'll see how well they do. Now, while we wait for those leathers to open up after being put in the tank, we're going to go ahead and add some more corals. So, I mean, my local fish store just really hasn't had anything super great recently that I want to add to the tank. I do have some corals, some soft corals, these little zoas here in my sump, so we'll go ahead and add those to the tank. Now, you may be asking, is it really a new build if I'm just taking corals from my current tank and putting them into the other tank? And I did buy a couple zoas, but if there's nothing good in my fish store, there's really nothing I can do. I could always order online, but given that it's 115 degrees right now, it's probably not the best idea. Now, generally, if you do get like a frag of a zoa, for example, you can usually get, for example, like a couple heads here for $20-$30, just like a little coral plug. I have seen some more common zoas, for example these blondies right here, which are a nice yellow and orange. I've been able to get whole rocks like that for maybe like $40-$50. It's not too unreasonable. I mean, in the old days, you would get these miscellaneous zoa rocks that were like big fist-size ones for like $60. A lot of those days are gone now. A lot of these zoas are definitely farmed and not wild corals like those used to be. But these are still good options. I already have a lot of them grown out. And we do have some frags in the other tank right now, the little Max Nano, and those will grow out as well. So even though these are pretty full already, we're going to go ahead and add them to the tank just because it's going to be a nice splash of color. You got the yellows, the oranges, the reds, the greens, more oranges and yellows. So there's a good mix of color that we'll be able to add to the tank, and that'll really brighten it up pretty much instantly, which is the great thing about these super tiny tanks, is just that you can fill them up pretty darn quickly, and they look great almost immediately, versus like these big tanks, just the SPS alone, the sticks, it takes forever to wait for them to grow out. And because this is America, you don't really get big colonies. You get little frags, for example, like these up here, which you have to wait for them to grow out into these big show sizes. So that's actually one of the reasons why I really enjoy the smaller tanks, just because you can fill them up fairly quickly, but that is also why people end up upgrading after a while. It's because they fill this up super fast with coral they like, then they realize, damn, I'm out of space, and then they try getting super big tanks. But yeah, enough of that kind of small talk. We'll go ahead and grab these guys and get them over to the little Nano. Alright, so it's now actually been a couple days, I would say maybe 4 or 5 days since I went ahead and put the leathers in. But yeah, you can see they're doing super well. This yellow leather, it looks honestly better in my big tank. It's lost a little bit of that Fiji yellow color, but I think that should be okay. It probably just needs to acclimate because it is a different type of light. But I mean, either way, it's open up, so I do know it's happy, which is the most important part. The other leather here in the back is doing great. I didn't expect anything less from it. It's always done well. And also, as you can see, I did do a little re-aquascaping just because, well, it's like 115 degrees outside and I have nothing else better to do. So, yeah, we added, all the little Recordia. I just kind of have a little perimeter set up because I don't actually have a lot of space on the rock itself to put each individual piece. There just aren't that many spots. So I am hoping that the mushrooms kind of grow and just make their way up the rock. And overall, everything else is, doing super nice. Nothing too crazy or out of the ordinary for this tank. I did find one other rock that had these red mushrooms on them in my refugium area, my little frag tank. So we went ahead and added that as well. And basically, for the most part, all the soft coral is now out of my main display and is now in here, which I think is really cool, just because having a more low flow environment is better off for these. Maybe a higher nutrient environment is better off for these soft coral, and we'll be able to leave the big tank just for the things that do well there, which are the sticks and of course like my hammers and such. But yet everything is doing super well, and basically at this point we are pretty much on the same route as this tank, which is grow out. It's a lot easier with a softy tank because they just basically spread and don't have to form that calcium skeleton to grow bigger. But yeah, that's pretty much it for today's episode. We're gonna go ahead and watch this guy kind of grow out. If I do add some more coral, we'll definitely go ahead and make a video of that, whatever it is I do. I am also contemplating adding my anemone in here as well, since it also does not need any calcium, but I'm not quite sure if we're going to do that yet. But yep, no more dragging it along. Thank you guys for watching this episode, and as always, I do appreciate the support, and I'll see you guys on the next one. Peace.
I grew up in a place